From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In the NOCO, a daily slice of Northern Colorado news and happenings. It's Thursday, February 22nd. I'm Erin O'Toole. Museum curator Acoma Gaither has been a student of Black history for as long as she can remember. She's pored over lots of rich historical accounts of Black life in the North, South, and East. But she says a lot of the history of Black life in our state still needs to be uncovered.
And that's what really drew me to Colorado. I think there's so much opportunity in learning about that, Western lens in terms of Black history. Just there's a lot of hidden stories there. And I think the spirit of, Black folks who came out here to, farm and homestead, it takes a certain personality,
True.
That kind of story and spirit really drew me out here.
Gaither recently moved to Denver from Minnesota to work as History Colorado's Associate Curator of Black History. We sat down to discuss some of the untold stories she wants to uncover here. I want to start by talking about your love for history, which I read started at a very young age, and it began in part because you read lots of books and you watched lots of movies. I'm curious how these activities fostered your curiosity in learning about the past and how that translated into you making history your career.
Yeah, I've always been interested in storytelling, loved books and movies. I was also a theater kid. So I loved telling stories. And I've always had a kind of social justice lens in my work. My dad, he's a librarian. So I got a lot of love of reading from him. And I just think that there's a lot of rich stories in American history that people don't know about. And I'm really excited to tap into that and kind of share the spirit of resistance and resiliency.
And there are so many Colorado places that really exemplify that spirit of resilience. I'm thinking about those farming communities like the Dry and Deerfield. And then there were also these areas where Black people could gather and be together and enjoy the outdoors or just celebrate, places like Lincoln Hills. I'm wondering if there are any of these kind of places that stand out to you in particular.
I would say definitely Lincoln Hills is one that stands out to me immensely. It was the only African-American resort west of the Mississippi during the time that it came about within the 1920s. There's three other resorts. One was in Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts called Oak Bluffs. There was Idlewild in Michigan, and then American Beach in Florida. So this story of Lincoln Hills in the mountain setting is very unique. And one thing that I like to say when you get into these kinds of places in terms of recreation and nature is that an aspect of the civil rights movement that a lot of people don't really realize is that one of them is getting Black folks connected to land again, because we were stolen from our homelands, so we were kind of neglected in that aspect of our life and experiences. So the story of Lincoln Hills really taps into that. And yeah, I think that this idea of having an oasis in the West is really unique, and it was a very special place.
I'm just imagining like what an amazing and vibrant place that must have been.
Right.
Acoma, I would love for you to give us a peek behind the curtain, so to speak. What goes into curating an exhibit? And are there certain steps that you take to ensure that the history and the identity of the community are authentically represented?
Yeah, I think museums traditionally have told African American history through a lens of course, resiliency, but through the lens of oppression in some capacity. We're dealing with white supremacy and slavery and a lot of kind of hardships, right? So I think what I'm trying to do in my work is really talk about the Black community from their own perspective, own resiliency, but not center it around whiteness in a way. So I really like to take take the lens of what was the community like, what were their social networks, how were folks surviving in this climate, and not focus it around trauma. That's kind of how I approach doing storytelling. And through curation specifically, we focus a lot on objects and artifacts. Of course, traditionally through museums, Black folks haven't felt represented in museums. So right now it's a lot of just building that trust. We have a program called Museum of Memory where folks can come in and just share their stories and do a lot of oral histories and do photo scanning. So not taking an extractive approach of, I want to just take your objects and we're going to keep it in this museum, but how can we both gain something in this storytelling? How can we give back to the community in terms of giving their photos back? Maybe we just get a digital scan or we just get a digital recording and kind of build a reciprocal relationship in storytelling.
Well, we're talking during February, which of course is Black History Month, but Black history is American history, and it is Colorado history, and it should be acknowledged throughout the entire year.
Yes.
Could you talk about what else History Colorado is doing to ensure that the contributions of Black people in the state are acknowledged and remembered?
Yeah, History Colorado, they're doing really interesting work in terms of programming. We have a series called Black Explanation, which is really taking I think a comprehensive look of Black Colorado history. They're talking about the diaspora. They're really tapping into a lot of the immigrant kind of population stories, which I find very interesting, but also talking about Lincoln Hills. There's going to be a hike to Lincoln Hills, and they're going to focus on like redlining of the outdoors, which I think is really cool. So you can actually kind of experience the place and space and not just hear these stories. So I think that's really interesting and really a really unique perspective. We have really great exhibits. The Dry is up right now, and it'll be up until, I believe, April. It'll be up till April. And we'll have a new exhibit on the Owl Club, which was a fraternity, and they had these debutante balls there. And of course, I'm going to be working on a refresh of the Lincoln Hills exhibit here. So I think we're tapping into kind of these really unique but powerful stories here.
Acoma Gaither is Associate Curator of Black History at History Colorado. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been great.
This conversation is part of our continued coverage for Black History Month. If you've got a subject or person in mind you think we should highlight, drop us a line. Email us at noco@kunc.org. Or you can send a text or leave a voicemail at 970-614-5323. That's it for us today here on In the NOCO. We'll be back tomorrow with more of what's happening in northern Colorado. Our theme music was composed by Colorado artist Robbie Reverb. We got production help from Stephanie Daniel. Robin Vincent is our executive producer. I'm your host, Erin O'Toole. We'll see you next time.